Hola, buenos días de San Domingo, Fortaleza. Espanol 说话 was spoken here. 说话西班牙人 in the 1629, 1630, early 1640s. Todo bien, todo bien. That's very interesting. I never knew that about Taiwan. There was 17 years of Spanish colonization, which the nearest to Taipei, a fort was right here called San Domingo. Cool. All right, history time. Back in 1629, the Spanish Empire, who became very powerful through the 1500s and had since the 1570s, I believe, a good base in Asia and the Philippines, not far from here, ventured up to this area and thought this would be a good spot for settlement in northern Taiwan. So from 1629 to about 1644 or so, northern Taiwan was a Spanish colony. Their main base operation was down that way, Keelung City, but they had a fort right here. And this is a gun from the 1600s right here. That was where the original fort was. It was made out of wood, so that's not it. They had some Spanish missionaries converting some local aboriginals to Catholicism, but they also had a lot of problems with the aboriginals, which were a host of different tribes that would fight with each other and make different alliances. So if you helped out one tribe, the other tribe would attack the Spanish. Missionaries were getting their heads cut off and all kinds of crazy stuff. And over the 17 years that the Spanish were here, they kept on having to send shipments of things from Philippines here to support this fort, and eventually the Dutch, who were set up in South Taiwan with their Asian base of operations, Batavia, Indonesia, another place I've been. And also interesting, I forgot to mention that 1 year ago we were in Cadiz, Spain, the base of operations for the Spanish Empire colonies all around the world, which is super far from here, but included this place, which is crazy to think about. Imagine taking a boat all the way from here to here from Spain over like 6 months. Incredible. So this was the Spanish fort for a small time, but the Spanish decided to abandon the area and the Dutch took control and built that building, 1644. And for a short time, it was a Dutch colony, pretty much all of Taiwan, the Netherlands. But the original name, Formosa, comes from a 1500s passage by the Portuguese. And if you knew a name, Hermosa is what they called it. Okay. And then in mainland China, something was brewing about. It was the end of the Ming Dynasty and the start of the Manchu, which is a northern peoples of the Heilongjiang area, who took over and started the Qing Dynasty. So some Ming Dynasty loyalists, and they're dancing over there. Awesome.
Yes.
Yes. All right,
Practice.
Practice.
We have a party tonight.
Whoa! All right, so a couple of guys, Ming Dynasty loyalists, took off over here to Taiwan, and the Dutch were, not a huge presence here, but they held lots of areas in Taiwan. So there's lots of battles where something called the Kangxia Kingdom took over. Got some cool Chinese guns here, Chinese writing on it. So the leaders of this kingdom wanted to reestablish the Ming Dynasty and once again attack China, but they really only got to Fujian, some different areas. They are also dancing. And before long, the Qing Dynasty sent in troops into Taiwan and defeated them by the late 1600s. Then the fort then was transferred, Spanish, Dutch, Kangxia breakaway kingdom, to the Qing Dynasty, China. Let's talk about more by the flags. All right, this is weird, kind of. I didn't know this. There's a Spanish flag. Castile. This is a Spanish fort in Taiwan, of all places. Some other flags. There's a republic. Different flags of who owned this fort. Built by the Spanish first. Dutch defeated the Spanish on Taiwan. Then they had it. Then I believe this maybe is a breakaway kingdom of the Ming Dynasty. Then the Qing Dynasty had control of Taiwan. Qing Dynasty, China. Alright, it's inside the old fort. Most of this is Dutch built, like this guy here. But originally there was a Spanish fort here, 1600s. And the Dutch came and the Kangxia breakaway kingdom of the Ming Dynasty, Qing Dynasty, and all kinds of different people. British times, late 1800s, mid 1800s, they had the Opium Wars in China. And several ports all around, including here, were ceded to, in Hong Kong, were ceded to the Tianjin, another one, were ceded to the British Empire, who rebuilt up this area. This was a tennis court during the Victorian era. And what you see today from the abandoned old Dutch fort was rebuilt up by the British, which was a British consulate for a long time, even into Japanese Taiwan era. And obviously the British took off during World War II, and we're going to talk about what's next. But most of what you see here is good old British, all long ways from the British Isle. Alright, so after the Second Opium War, several places around Taiwan, including here, Shui, and about 4 other ports, and also on mainland who became British ports. But yeah, lots of Victorian era. They made a colonial Indian style building here for the British consulate to be. And you can see how they would have tea. Oolong tea developed first in Taiwan, became huge during this era, where they exported it all over the world. And it was a British place in the Qing Dynasty, the Japanese colonial era. That's an interesting bit of history. This guy, in 1872, was a British-Canadian missionary, doctor, who landed here on a passenger ship called the Sea Dragon and chose to settle here. Married, had family, and died here. Canadian man, British Canadian. Hermosa, which means beautiful island in Portuguese, or Hermosa in Spanish. Spanish came here early 1620s, 1629. The big river estuary of port, important during colonial times and all throughout history. Hermosa, Hermosita. Really cool. Main river to Taipei, Taiwan, connected to the Pacific Ocean. Taiwan Strait. Part of it. Alright, let's finish this out. Site of San Domingo, 1629, Spanish colonial fort attached with the Manila, Philippines. This is the site of the later British built consulate building. Let's run down the history of what you see here too is 1644 and after built Dutch fort, the Netherlands. And I really like this part. They got all the flags of the different entities that once still controlled the area. So we start way down with the Spanish flag. Viva España. I've been there about 1 year ago, learned about their colonial history, especially the Americas colonial history. Oh man, it's crazy. Let's go from the present back to the past. Right now we're in Taiwan, and at one point in the 70s, I believe it said, it was an American consulate. Before that, for a brief period, Australian. This was, of course, after World War II. And that craziness where Taiwan was part of the Japanese Empire, 1895 to 1945. After that, transferred to Australians and Americans and this side of the world. The British consulate from 1861 to 1930-40, after the Second Opium Wars. A lot of this was built, you can see from those times. Here's the cool dragon on the Qing dynasty, the last imperial dynasty of 5,000 years of imperial China. It was part of that for a couple hundred years. Before that, a very interesting thing called the Kangxia, which were loyal to the Ming dynasty, Ming-Cha dynasty that ruled Taiwan for about 50 years. They inhabited this fort and they kicked out the people that were before here at this fort, which were colonial Netherlands, the Dutch. Dutch East Indies Company. They had this fort, which in the 1600s, their colonial base in Jakarta, Batavia, Indonesia. And the original builders of this fort, their colonial base in Manila, Philippines, the Spanish, Espanol, who had half of the Americas, all of California, Mexico, all the way down the South American coast, Cuba, Philippines, all kinds of places all over the world, man. The Spanish Empire were the original builders of this place. 1629. I like how they have all the flags. That's pretty interesting. Very cool.